So why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do just to get started?
Sure. My name is Rick Nagel. I'm a photographer and a location scout in New York City. And this year for 2020, I drove around the country, went to all lower 48 states, and I'm putting together a documentary of America in 2020. People aren't listening in America right now. And there's so much that I don't understand about what we call being an American. And just with everything that happened this year, how people handled racial tensions and inequalities and, the pandemic and politics, I just realized how divided we were. And I'm going to put together a 7-part series, one question per episode. And then the last one will be kind of just an overview of my journey and how I changed through all of this. I was born in Milwaukee. I went to high school and college in Pittsburgh. I lived on the near Brookline and Overbrook, and then I went to college at Carnegie Mellon. Moved to New York right away. Someone gave me a job eventually to do location scouting, and it's just something that I'm really designed for. It's a sense of adventure and being able to talk to people and have an eye for things and make it happen.
I think we talked a little bit about why you decided to make a documentary, but is there a moment that you realized that you wanted to make it?
Yeah, no, there was absolutely a moment. So I was in New York City during the pandemic. So for 3.5 months, it was terrible here. And we were all locked indoors. But I was kind of fine with it, not stressing about work, not stressing about money, not stressing about those things let me be at peace with myself. And then I came to Pittsburgh actually to take care of my mom, though, but I couldn't see her because she was in the hospital. But I stayed there and went out taking pictures with your mom one day. And on her way back, she said, "Don't drive through downtown. There is a massive protest going on and the gridlock's terrible." So I swung my car around and headed straight downtown and wasn't sure if I was going to be able to find it. And all of a sudden, just this mass amounts of people started going through. So I pulled over and I got out and I started following them. And it was a mostly peaceful protest. Every now and then someone would take one of those big planters and knock it over, but then people would be behind it and they would pick it up and they were picking up the dirt and potting the plants back in. So it was really that was the worst that I saw. And then all of a sudden we got to, and I can't think of the name, but it's one of the streets downtown that has the big federal style buildings and it feels like a canyon. And the air changed. People started to walking backwards. People were hesitating. Just the whole mood shifted. And there was this beautiful young Black girl in the middle of the street facing all of us. And she said, "This is the time that we need our white allies to come to the front." And at that moment, I said, okay, I'm not just here to be a photographer. I've been called into action. So I walked straight to the front. And there at the intersection, the police were on one side, just standing there like an army. And on the other side, people were just starting to mill about. They didn't know, we hadn't seen police all day, and this was scary. And I decided to stand right in the middle of the street. So I was in between both equally and started taking pictures and a little bit of video. And as the protesters started to kind of pile up. And then within 5 minutes of standing there, rubber bullets and tear gas started to be shot. And I don't know why. I literally had a front row seat and there was no reason for that to happen. And that's exactly what happened. And in that moment, I was like, what is America? I just saw the police attack peaceful protesters. I saw in the midst of that people breaking in and stealing things. I watched the news that night and it was a different story than what I had witnessed firsthand. And I went home and for 5 days, I just sat on that and I was just confused.
What was that trip like for you to drive around the country from the aspect of being in your car for that long, but also traveling through America at such a divisive time?
Um, it was the best thing I've ever done in my life, and it was terrifying at times. My main mission on this whole thing was not to get anyone else sick. I didn't want to get sick, and more importantly, I didn't want to get anyone else sick. And it was a humbling experience. I've never been homeless. I've been camping, but I've never been homeless. And not having access to a shower or a bathroom is huge. You don't know what that is like. what it looks like when I sleep at night. Can you see people on the street that are homeless? And that was when Starbucks were open and they could use a bathroom. And now things are closed down, and it was hard. I would go 5-6 days without showering sometimes, but it was humbling. And I realized how little I needed. And I met the most amazing people, but people were really open to talking. I think part of that was because this is a pandemic. Part of that is because the country is so divided and everyone is confused, if not scared. And I was willing to listen. I was one of the few people that was out there that was just saying, I won't talk, I will just listen. I had my mind changed a bunch of times by people. I kept an open mind, and, you know, I rose to every challenge as best I could. I got my car broken into in Milwaukee. I got threatened by Proud Boys, pulled up to some guys on the side of the road in New Mexico that were shooting guns. And not only did I interview them, but they let me shoot the guns.
Were there any moments where you were like genuinely scared for your life or regretted doing what you were doing?
I never regretted. There were definitely times that I second guessed myself when it was really hard. There were some really difficult times. There were definitely scary moments. I was camping one night in California, and there was wildfires for weeks. I was taking pictures of the stars, so you leave your lens on, you know, you open for a while to get the stars in. And when I looked at one of the pictures, there was this orange glow. So I zoomed in on that. There was a forest fire that was just breaching over a hill near me. So I left middle of the night, and I drove and parked next to the local fire station and just slept in my car there. I found out later, in fact, just recently, that whole town burnt down. It just absolutely burnt down. There was another time in Washington, D.C. for the MAGA rally. At the very end of the night, I followed the Proud Boys up to the Washington Monument. As I was filming, this guy turned around and gave me like the okay sign and just kind of gave me this kissy face and like, get out of here. And then he just flipped me off and held his finger up in front of my camera. And as soon as that little speech was done, he went over to kind of like a core group of Proud Boys and was talking to them, and then pointed at me. And I realized I was the only one with a mask on. And that's how I knew I didn't belong. And so I kind of disappeared into the crowd, and I took a really long way around, and I walked out of there, and that was the end of my night in DC. But that was, what am I doing? I'm forgetting. The Portland riots, the Portland protests. That was absolutely the scaredest I've been in my life. I had a Molotov cocktail blow up 15 feet from me. I was in tear gas.
This has been declared a riot. All persons must immediately leave the area.
That's the scariest I've ever been in my life.
On a more positive note, then, what were some of your favorite experiences and like your favorite people that you got to meet while you were traveling?
One of my favorite experiences was the Portland protest, because there are these moments where there's a lot of energy and people are being arrested, and then it like mellows out, and there's half an hour or an hour where everyone's just kind of milling around waiting for the next thing to happen. And so I took that time to talk to people, and that was so eye-opening. This girl, Jessica, I met, she introduced me to the magic in the world. I went to a Lakota darkness ceremony and got to experience a Native American ritual with this amazing group of people. And she just kind of taught me about how to listen to the magic in the world. She's going to be a friend for life. And I got to reconnect with friends all over the country.
Speaking of a look into people's minds, what was some of like the weirdest experiences, weirdest people that you met?
When I was in Portland at the protest, it was the Trump train had come through, 600 cars, mostly with flags of some sort or another. There was this protester as the Trump train came through, and he was talking big to all the trucks. And someone got out of one of the trucks and decked him. One hit, scrawny kid went straight down. And a guy off another truck jumped off, ran over to him. And then the other guy's friends came around, and he's like, let's get him over to someplace safe. And I saw him about 20 minutes later, surrounded by protesters. And he just kept yelling. He's like, I understand that I don't understand. So I'm listening. I'm asking you to tell me. And the protesters were saying, you don't get it, man. You don't understand. He's like, I know. I see that. So tell me. And no one would have a conversation with him. So I finally grabbed him at one point, and I said, let me interview you. And out of everyone that was there, the 600 vehicles from the Trump side and the however many people from the protest side, no one was listening to anyone. But that guy listened to me and I listened to him. We listened to each other. And I think that's what we need to do in this country.
Are there any people you wish you hadn't met or any places you wish you hadn't gone?
No. I wish I had gone more places. I wish I had had more time. At one point, like I saw smoke and I was like, oh, that must be a rendering facility. And I stopped and I'm like, I am going to take a picture of that. And I drove following the smoke and it was someone's house on fire. And I drove up and there was the fire department there. And at that point they were just letting it burn. It was smoldering. They had done what they could. And I pulled up and I said, hey, is everyone okay? And they said, yeah, no one got hurt. And I'm like, oh, thank God. And then again, I had to like go against my grain, which was just to turn around. But instead I pulled out my camera and started taking pictures and videotaping it. And they looked at me like, you are a sick person. And I'm like, I know. Another time I was driving by a tent city in somewhere in California, and it was literally a square block that had tents all around it, and there were families there. And it was heartbreaking, and the smoke from the wildfires was just sinking in. It was an orange haze, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, and families are living on the street, and I'm like, the last thing they want is someone to videotape this, but I have to do this. I have to show what they were going through at this moment. So I drove around the block, shooting out the window, and some guy yelled at me and he's like, you better not be filming us. And I said, I'm sorry. Like, that's all I could say. I couldn't stop filming. I just had to apologize because it was the wrong thing to do in terms of being a human to another human, but it was the right thing because I had to document this year, and that was painful for everyone.
Has your goal for the documentary changed since you started, or has it been pretty much?
Oh yeah. I mean, I just wanted to ask some questions and travel around for 3 months, and I'm like, I'll just get a, ding, 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 ding. It'll be real simple, and I'll just put together like a, big TikTok or something. And now it's a full-on documentary that I hope people in the future can look back on. And we look at the 1918 pandemic, and we're like, what was it like? And so I want the next pandemic people to be able to look back and say, oh, that's what was happening. And if people are talking about what was all the drama with the Trump administration, how were Americans so divided? I want to show the protests. I want to show the Trump rallies. When people say how were so many black men and women being killed by the police, in these unarmed situations, and what did that do to the communities and to the country, and why were people talking all lives matter, blue lives matter? I want people to be able to look at this not from a news point of view and not from a movie point of view, but from people actually who are living through it. So yeah, that changed.
So have you started working on post-production, editing, those kinds of things?
Oh, Lord. I am still on photos. I'm up to Utah, and that's like a third of the way through.
Sounds like it's a pretty small production. Do you have anybody helping you with that, or?
I do. Yeah, actually, Brian is helping me. Yeah, he's been amazing. I was on the road. I kept sending him hard drives because if anything happened to me or like my car got broken into, I didn't want to lose everything that I had. So he received it and then collected it all and made notes on it. It's been a huge help. And so once I kind of dive into this, he and I are going to start editing this. And I really hope at some point I get enough buzz that, someone who's just better than us can come in and just take it over and make it go from, a solid B plus to what it deserves to be, which is, the accounts of 2020, in people's own words. I feel I have a huge responsibility to them and to this year and to all of us and to history. And I will do the best I can, but there are people that are better at it than me, and you know, hopefully I can get a little bit of attention on this and get people inspired.
Is there any advice you have to anybody who's thinking about getting into filmmaking, photography, or considering making a documentary of their own?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always important to have your voice, and if your voice is pictures or movies or documentaries, I think that it is important to constantly have your voice. You know, the big thing I learned with photography is, in the beginning, I wanted to do it right. And now when I look at a picture, I say, what do I like? Like, what is appealing to me? What am I trying to say with it? What did I capture in that moment? And that's where my voice comes from. I could make pretty pictures, but I'm trying to make a picture only that I could make. And I think that any artist or any person needs to do that. They need to know, they need to spend their lifetime figuring out who they are, and then art can be a voice of that.
Do you have any other stuff going on for yourself that you want to promote on this massive platform that I have?
I mean, right now I'm concentrating more on the documentary than everything. I'm posting pictures on Instagram just because it makes me happy. So would love to have people see my photos. As I go through photos that I like, I put one up a day. I haven't been doing much stuff on TikTok because I'm so wrapped up in this, but I'm sure once I start editing, I'll do more of that. And then as soon as this is done, I am going to figure out my next photo project, and I'm going to get back on the road, but that's not for months and months till after the pandemic, because that was seriously difficult driving through this country during a pandemic. But yeah, please follow me on TikTok, Instagram. Hope you like my stuff. If you don't, let me know.